Well, hello there, and welcome to day 92 today with me, Jordan Woodley, and it is my second live stream of the week. But I mean, frankly, yesterday's live stream, does it count? Does it count? It was an interesting experiment and an interesting event to attempt. You know, as I said, this platform was very much about trying new mediums, and I've definitely learned some things, and we'll continue to try new things. And maybe the date had something to do with it. Who knows? But today is my official live stream day, and of course I would live stream to cover the new release on Amazon Prime Video here in the UK, Godzilla vs Kong. I suppose my relationship with sort of the kaiju franchises has always been a bit of I wouldn't say a precarious one, but it's funny. I had a conversation recently about 3 geek culture genres that I should, in theory, like, because it very much matches the sorts of things I already like, and yet for whatever reason I have never managed to fully invest in them. And those are primarily anime, Star Trek, and kaiju. Oh, before I continue, if you want to, please do comment in the text box. I will be replying, thanks to my lovely fiance and producer Helen. We'll be checking any comments, so they'll be read out and I will respond to them as we go through. But if not, I'll plow through and talk about the film as I normally do. So, as I say, kaiju, Star Trek, and anime, they aren't genres that I particularly hate. You know, they're not genres that I don't get on with, you know, or struggle with. They are just simply, they're a side to culture that I only seem to be able to have a periphery relationship with, as in I can watch them, be entertained by them. Some of them I really like, but for whatever reason, I just don't have any motivation or interest in pursuing them or finding out what, you know, the new, whatever the new Star Trek film or TV series is. I don't follow that. I don't follow, you know, I don't watch any anime series, and it's not that I avoid them. I just have more of I suppose, a layman's attitude to them in terms of, like, you know, I have seen all the recent J.J. Abrams centric Star Trek films, but that's just because it's there and available and in the mainstream. And similarly, I should really love kaiju. I really should. It should be something that I'm really interested in. I remember being a kid in, you know, 1998, when, of course, all the big hoo-ha was about Roland Emmerich's Godzilla film. And I remember being really excited by the prospect of it, and the marketing of it was done phenomenally. It really was, you know, it is the demonstration, probably the best marketing that for trying to launch a franchise that I've ever seen. And I remember seeing it, and it's only as an adult, or maybe not even as an adult, but over the last sort of 10-15 years that I've been watching, that I've looked back at the Roland Emmerich one and gone, oh, it's not a good film. But bearing in mind, as a kid, I thought it was great. I thought it was really exciting. And of course, I would have watched it around the same time as I watched Lost World Jurassic Park. And the parallels between them are endless. I think I will cover Jurassic Park again at some point in this conversation. I think it will come up a fair amount, because my thoughts on the Godzilla franchise very much tie in with that. And so, you know, we get all the way, you know, what is it, another 18 years before we get to the Gareth Edwards franchise. And to the credit of the Godzilla verse that we've had over the last 7 years, people have been talking, you know, endlessly about you know, companies trying to make the next big film franchise after the MCU, and I've written and talked quite extensively about things like, of course, DC tried to do it. The Monsterverse, which of course was Dracula and Frankenstein. I think over the course of about 5 years, they must have. I must have read multiple reports of different ways they were trying it, and of course, you ended up with Dracula Untold, and then that Tom Cruise mummy film. But the Godzilla verse has quietly been rattling on, and okay, though it's only 4 films over 7 years, this is one continuity, one continuing story, across 4 films. And Godzilla vs Kong is a culmination. It is the Avengers, the first Avengers film of this particular universe, where we get to see, 2 titans going up against each other that we've seen in other films, and we've seen them go, their arcs and story, and now we and the characters who follow them, and now we get to see them in a big all-out brawl. So I suppose the thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to probably spend 15-20 minutes talking about the film with minimal spoilers. Now, that's not a guarantee, because I will talk about the film. I will just avoid any of the major revelations in the film. But if there is something, particularly Act 1, that's considered spoiler, then I will discuss it. But there are some major plot twists and some major narrative tie-ins that I will avoid talking about in this first section, and then assuming that I've sort of covered all of that, I'll then jump into the spoiler section, but I will give a notification of when that is. So Godzilla vs Kong is a as I say, kaiju is not something I seem to particularly be interested in, and I don't know why that is. Perhaps, I don't know, on some level the scale of them is the problem for me. I mean, going back to the Gareth Edwards one back in 2014, the thing that I thought was amazing about that film is it demonstrated the scale of Godzilla compared to the scale of the humans, and the idea that this is sort of untenable. These are the apex gods reclaiming the earth, and that was the narrative of the Gareth Edwards one. And so we had that. I remember specifically that shot of the guy firing the flare into the air, and all you can see is it traveling barely up Godzilla's leg before it goes back down, and it sort of indicates how big Godzilla is. And that film in itself has its problems. You could talk about the fact that Bryan Cranston should have been the lead, but then is killed off fairly early on. The fact that they cut away from major fights and really sort of rob us of the opportunity to watch an all-out monster brawl. But the thing, like I say, the thing it's credited for is the fact that it really gives you that sense of scale for Godzilla. It really sets up the fact that these monsters are huge, and that what they're doing is going to be world shaping, because a fight between 2 kaijus is a city level event. And then you have Kong, and Kong was a much more smaller film. Kong literally was a smaller kaiju. And therefore it didn't seem so untenable when Samuel L. Jackson goes up against Kong. Not quite in the rampage where rock rampage way, but it's explained that Kong isn't fully grown yet, and of course it's set in the Vietnam War, so it's got 30-40 years until we get to modern day. So, but even then the scale is there. The problem is when you get to Godzilla King of Monsters and then to Godzilla versus King Kong, is they kind of struggle to maintain that. They struggle to create, because they essentially are creating 2 narrative strands. You have your kaiju narrative strand, and you have your humans following it. And the problem, I suppose, and by establishing these titans and the scale of them, is it's very hard to show them off as big as they are, and yet also have them be able to relate to the humans who are involved in whatever fight is going on. I actually didn't dislike Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think the monster fighting is fantastic. The problem with Godzilla King of the Monsters is the fact that it has a dozen characters and barely one of them is interesting. And so anytime that you're not watching Godzilla, you're watching characters you just don't care about, and it's frustrating. And I'd much rather watch the short film of Godzilla go up against Godzilla, Mothra, Ghidorah go up against and Rodan go up against King Ghidorah as a non-human monster film than everything we got in that film. And then of course you get to this, and unfortunately the big thing, my first major takeaway, is the fact that scale wise you've gotten to a point now where you can't really recreate the sense of Gareth Edwards' sense of scale, because for instance the film opens with Kong still on Skull Island, just sort of living day to day, and it is very quickly indicated that he's actually trapped on Skull Island, that Monarch have created a field to prevent him from leaving. But also he's developed this relationship to this deaf girl. And of course the problem you have is immediately to have Kong, looking and picking up this deaf child, you immediately go, well, if he's as big as he should be, and if he's as big as he should be compared to Godzilla, the scale is a bit off. And that's throughout the whole film, is the idea, and then when we get to the fights and the matchups and all the things that happen, it's difficult because you want to connect the humans to the monsters, but also get that sense of monsters. The other thing I suppose about it is that I think, as I mentioned, the Roland Emmerich Godzilla is much more my, was sort of where my starting point. And I think I've always been much more a Lizards guy than I have been a Kong guy. And so, I really like Skull Island, but frankly, it was the only one of all of these Monsterverse that I didn't see in the cinema. I actually sort of watched it at home, half paying attention. And I feel bad because it probably is, of those three, the best one. But it's just never, King Kong has never been the character I've been interested in. What they do with this film is they make him, he is essentially the lead. You open the film with him. And I can understand why narratively you tend to veer more towards Kong than Godzilla, because, and it possibly boiled down to the anthropomorphization, that Kong, though he is a 50, 100 foot ape, whatever size ape he is, because he is more humanoid, you can relate to the sort of humanity within the beast kind of thing, of course, because that's the theme of King Kong since his creation. And we can anthropomorphize that in terms of facial features, the way he reacts, his body language. And I think this film leans into that. Of course, the relationship between him and the deaf girl indicates that more of a humanity to Kong. With the Godzilla of it, because this film really has primarily two strands to it. You have Kong and the humans who are following Kong, and the humans who are following Godzilla, but they're not really following Godzilla. They are working out what's going on, relating to Godzilla, and then Godzilla turns up. And I think the reason for that is the fact that they want it. Godzilla, even in the Gareth Edwards film and the 2019 film, Godzilla is much more the unknowable beast, where he turns up and he seems to do good, but we don't really understand Godzilla's motivations, and we don't really understand. He just seems to do good, and he is the king of the monsters, and he will help us. But they don't tend to give him a relationship with humans, except for like the weird side eye sometimes that he'll give a character like Aaron Taylor Johnson at the end of the Gareth Edwards film. Now, I understand that because that's to do with the lizard of it. That, you know, the fact that it's much harder to anthropomorphize a lizard than it is an ape, and I get that. I understand that you know, the way they've decided to go with it, even though if you go back to the Japanese films, they really do try to anthropomorphize Kong and think of different ways, like what is it? You know, the more humorous ways they present Godzilla, and of course giving him, what's it, Godzuki, the son of Godzilla, and stuff like that. But the idea of Godzilla in this film is that he is unknowable. He just is, and we have to accept that. And so the film opens with Godzilla attacking this company called Apex and their facility. And of course, it comes that question of, oh, have we just assumed Godzilla was good based on Godzilla and King of the Monsters? Have we just assumed Godzilla is good? But frankly, you know, he is a monster and a god. And if he feels like it, he will attack a city. He will attack, people. He has no qualms about doing that. And we are just simply bystanders. And that's really the theme of this, the idea of, oh, what's Godzilla doing? Why is he doing it? And that's where that's where the story involving Millie Bobby Brown, who is it? Is it Brian Tyree Henry and the kid from Deadpool 2, whose name I've completely forgot. You know, you follow them trying to solve a mystery of why Godzilla's doing what he's doing. But on the other hand, you have Alexander Skarsgård and the little deaf girl and another doctor who's with him and their team, and they're following King Kong. But their relationship to King Kong's much more relating to how he feels or what he wants, and you can really see the difference in narrative lines in that respect, that it's more about Godzilla's wants and King Kong's wants and Godzilla's intentions. And so, you know, so it's all setting it up and laying up the groundwork ready for them to meet. And you know, the film, to its credit, doesn't, the justification for why Godzilla and King Kong are fighting is pretty well placed. People have watched the trailers for it in the run-up, and of course have assumed plot points and assumed certain theories about what's going on. And on some level, you know, whether they're right or wrong, I don't want to, again, that would veer more into spoilers, but when we discover why King Kong and Godzilla are initially trying to get to each other and trying to start a fight, the actual justification is quite interesting and quite good, and it feeds into the themes that we've seen in the earlier films, particularly in Godzilla King of the Monsters. But as I say, the other problem I have, I suppose, is that this is much more a Kong film because of, as I mentioned, the themes of relating to Kong. And a lot of the adventure of it ties into much more into Skull Island than it does either of the Godzilla films. Saying that, there are certain things from the Godzilla films that do get paid off, and it does come back to, but at least in the first half, it directly relates to Kong and the Hollow Earth and the skull crawlers that we saw in Skull Island and that side of things. Sorry, one minute.
Ignore it.
Yep. And so, you know, you're following Kong, you're following Godzilla, and again, the film, knowing that this is the fourth film in the franchise, doesn't spend too much time setting everything up because it just drops you in it. And that's the smart thing about the film. The film knows you're here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to see these two get together and fight. And it doesn't wait too long to do that. And that's something it does really well. It gets to them fighting pretty well, at least round one, you might say, of them fighting pretty quickly. And it's cool. It's a really cool fight. It actually genuinely has scale and effect, and you can see how, you know, these two are so desperate to tear into each other that you'd start to see the damage that it's doing to, you know, and the people trying to manage the fight without getting caught in it, and then of course that, I suppose, relates nicely to the original Gareth Edwards films, where, you know, sometimes the collateral damage is just happening, and it's not the fault of the monsters. They are just, because of their size and scale, they cannot avoid causing damage. I suppose that's a curious thing about this film as well, which is the original Godzilla film of this series was very solidly set in our world today, or our world as of 2014. Kong Skull Island was definitely set in the Vietnam War. And those are events that are portrayed as, oh, this is our world, and there are monsters hidden in plain sight. We just didn't realize they were there. Or, you know, when they found Kong, organizations covered it up, and he hasn't kicked up much of a fuss, so people just didn't know. When you get to Godzilla vs. Kong, it seems like over the course of 7 years, it's as if, like, it's like it's presumably only about 7-ish years since the first film, and yet technologically wise, I've jumped about 100, because at this point, you know, the technology that the humans have and the organizations like Monarch and Apex have to cope with the kaiju and to cope with the world and to sort of advance themselves it's Star Trek. It's Star Trek level tech, where you get to a sense of, you know, so you know, this is far left behind the idea of you know, how we in our world today would cope with this. It's, oh no, we have like giant force fields, and, you know, these craters that can travel through you know, through different I don't want to say dimensions, but, you know, and it's that level of sort of sci-fi now, where it's like, oh, we just have to accept it is speculative fiction on top of science fiction, because it's a curious thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, as I say, that first Gareth Edwards film really did start off wanting to be, oh, this is our world. How the heck do we cope with, you know, something like Godzilla? And I think the 3 acts of the film do pace fairly well. The first act, I think, like I said, gets to the point fairly quickly, and it establishes Godzilla and Kong and the lead up to their first brawl pretty well. And the only problem that this film has, and unfortunately the first act particularly presents this, which is the same problem that Godzilla King of the Monsters had, which is there are a lot of human characters, and they are not. I don't really care about any of them. I mean, it's interesting to see Millie Bobby Brown reprise her role of Madison from King of the Monsters. It's nice to see her back. Like I say, the kid from Deadpool 2, it's just nice to see him. He's a good actor, and the two of them have a nice chemistry. And then Brian Tyree Henry, who I know as Paperboy from Atlanta, who's playing a very different kind of role. He's unbearable. He plays this podcaster, conspiracy theorist podcaster, and he reminds me of the guy from Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, who's sort of scientifically minded but quirky and geeky, but also, you know, a little bit I don't really know how to describe it. Sort of, you know, grows my own. I don't drink tap water because of the fluoride, and you know, I grow my own vegetables, and it veers into that territory where it's like, is this what conservatives think that liberals are? You know, and it's that thing where it's like, see, this is fueling the fire of like political division, because if this is sort of the portrayal of this kind of person, then no wonder that, you know, the right wing think of us like this, because this guy is unbearable. the Fallen Kingdom guy unbearable. So and he's okay. He's an okay comedy foil. He doesn't go too far, and I think Ryan Tyree Henry really does try to make the character appealing beyond just annoying podcaster dude. And again, having the kids with him seems to balance them out fairly well. And then, like I said, then you have Alexander Skarsgård and his people, and then there are 2 scientist ladies who are with him, and the deaf girl. And then you have the Apex Company, which is it's got the head of the Apex Company, and then his daughter, and there must be about 8 or 9 characters who you're following across 3 different plot lines. And frankly, like I say, like it's because it's jumping between them, and then you've also got Godzilla and Kong. It does come back to the same problem, possibly not quite as bad as King of the Monsters. Whereas King of the Monsters had this thing where you'd be having Godzilla fighting King Ghidorah, and then it would cut to people in a control room talking about it. And the only actor who I cared about in King of the Monsters was Ken Watanabe, and then they kill Ken Watanabe. And it's like, oh, well, now I care about no one. And similarly, you know, this film, it kind of, to some degree, it kind of knows that these characters are not disposable, but they're there just to help get from one plot to another plot to another plot. But unfortunately, you do still have to deal with them. And again, I don't know how it's done. I don't really know how in the Japanese kaiju movies how they deal with human characters when all you want to do is go back to the kaiju stuff. But it's not it's a difficult watch in that respect for that reason to some degree. And as I say, you get to the second act, and the second act, like I say, pays off the Kong Skull Island plotline, where we go into the Hollow Earth, which was established in Kong Skull Island, and that stuff is actually really cool. There's some really cool effects going into the Hollow Earth and getting there, and the way they have to do it, and then sort of what that world looks like. You know, it has real Journey to the Center of the Earth. I mean, it practically is Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's interesting, I suppose, because I've talked extensively in other videos in some of the big blockbuster films about how, I mean, of course, like everyone, I am missing the theatre experience. And some films it's to do with the drama, and some films it's to do with the sort of the concentration. And in the case like this is an example of a film, probably the closest to maybe Wonder Woman 1984 when I saw that in January, where I just was like, I would love to have seen this on the big screen and get the scale of it, because it just, you know, even with our modern TVs and the way things are presented, it just is not the same. It's not the same. And it reminds me of I had friends who tried to show me Pacific Rim, and Pacific Rim was a film that I missed in the cinema, and so they wanted to show it me, you know, just on the television, you know, some years after that. And I watched it, and it seemed fun, and it seemed interesting, and as I say, the problem I had was that it's not something I naturally relate to. It's just kaiju and that sort of stuff isn't stuff I'm particularly interested in. And additionally, having it on the television really takes away from it. And I know this because I then went to see Pacific Rim Uprising in the cinema, and I really wish I'd seen those experiences in reverse, because the problem with Pacific Rim Uprising is that feels like it should be on a TV, and that when you watch it in the cinema, yeah, it's got some interesting, the way it's shot has some interesting moments, but frankly, it boils down to the Power Rangers problem, where when you have a giant robot and a giant monster, and then a model or CGI city, and there's no real human scale to it, you may, you may as well be watching two people inside a model city, because you just can't get the sense of size. Whereas I'm very clearly, even watching Pacific Rim on the TV, you could see that, oh, on the big screen this would look incredible, and the scale and size of it would be shot in a way that would look incredible. And similarly with this, I think watching this would have been phenomenal in the cinema, just because I did like King of the Monsters for that reason. You really got that sense of scale and size, and the monsters really did feel humongous, and when they were hitting each other, it really did feel like you were seeing something, major and extreme. And so, and so unfortunately, that's just the way it is, and the climate that we're in, and the fact that, another indicator that the theatrical experience is sorely missed, and that's a shame. But we deal with the cards we're played, and that's a good indicator of the quality of the film, that it's shot in a way that you do think this would look phenomenal in a theater, and that's a good sign. I think now seems like the good junction to talk about spoilers. I don't really have that much more to say, non-spoilers. Like, I suppose just to give up my thoughts generally on it is, it was fun. It was a fun experience. I still think that I do have that disassociative relationship with it. I do think that I liked it, but I can't say that it stirred me. I can't say, it had the Infinity War or Endgame kind of shockwaves, or even the experience of watching Justice League on the TV that I have, or Star Wars, or anything like that. It's just something where I went, that was fun. It was cool to see these characters together. I'm glad that they've managed to pull this off. But other than that, yeah, it's fine. It is probably. I still think potentially Kong is a better film, and I think that though Gareth Edwards' directing of Godzilla is probably better than this, I think the problems with Gareth Edwards' Godzilla film, the ones I mentioned before, are the marks against. So if I was to rate it, I would probably put this, probably Kong, this, 2014 Godzilla, King of the Monsters, something like that. But yeah, this is a perfectly, it's fine, it's fun. It's very, I won't be thinking about it in a week, but it was fun to enjoy it. It was very popcorn in that respect. So this is the point where I'm going to actually talk about spoilers and talk about the plotting in relation to the Godzilla franchise, because it's heavy in spoilers, and I can kind of get into the meat of it. So unfortunately, being a live stream, there is a chance that someone will jump on later. I hope that doesn't happen. If I had a little sign which just had spoilers, I would hold it up throughout this bit, but this is the spoiler point from now. So the thing that I am impressed with, especially in the third act, is the fact that they pay off the ending of King of the Monsters with the head of King Ghidorah paying directly into the building of Mechagodzilla. And that is really cool. And that is something that people have discussed thoroughly in the trailers. I mean, the theorizing for that was completely wrong. The assumption was that Godzilla was the Godzilla who was attacking cities and attacking people was actually Mechagodzilla in disguise, like the classic Japanese. Apparently, that's the sort of storylines that they have. And then Godzilla would actually turn up and they would team up to fight. It doesn't quite go that way. It actually genuinely is Godzilla. It's genuinely Godzilla attacking. But the reason Godzilla's attacking is because he can sense through whatever, mystical psychic power that Godzilla has, that they are building Mechagodzilla. And that's cool. That is genuinely very cool. And the design of Mechagodzilla and the way it relates to the head of King Ghidorah is actually, it really is very cool. I think the only shame about it is that at the end of King of the Monsters, they very clearly established that Charles Dance is the head of that, leading that organization. And for whatever reason, well, the obvious reason is they couldn't get Charles Dance back, but narratively, he just disappears. He's not mentioned. I mean, because this is all setting up to get to this point, it's probably best that he doesn't appear anyway, but he never really gets acknowledged. And it's not entirely clear how the head of King Ghidorah has ended up in the possession of Walter Simmons, the head of Apex. But that doesn't matter because it's a Godzilla film. It doesn't, these plot lines, it doesn't matter that much. We got Mechagodzilla, and it looks really cool. And again, it gives Kong and Godzilla a reason to fight and to team up, and it looks pretty good. It does look, it's a good fight, and that's the point in the film where you've come for this and you know what you're getting. And the last half an hour genuinely gives you the full popcorn experience. It like I said, the theatrical aspect of it. 4DX is a funny thing, really, because in theory 4DX is not what we should be going to the cinema for. It's a silly, almost theme park gimmick, having been thrown around in a chair and wind blasted in your face. But this is the kind of silly film that really would benefit from a 4DX experience. I think I actually did see King of the Monsters in 4DX, and that was fun. And I think this is very similar to that. This isn't supposed to be serious cinema, serious film. This is supposed to be something that's fun. And if it's a little bit theme park, so be it. And so consequently, I would. This is something I would have paid to see in 4DX, and I would have been thrown around in my chair. And when it gets to Godzilla and Kong, knocking 10 bells out of a Mechagodzilla, or actually for a long time it's the other way around. That's very cool. That's very, very, very cool. And I suppose the other problem is that it's then, because it knows what it's giving you, it doesn't try to make it any more complex or richer than that. In fact, it goes into very standard characters where inexplicably all of the villain characters, like I say, Walter Simmons, the head of Apex, and his team, and his daughter, who went into the Hollow Earth with Alexander Skarsgård, and those people, inexplicably all of the villains get killed off at some point, just because of one thing or another, and all of our hero humans somehow also manage to survive. And it's silly because it's like, oh, so there's no real stake to this. It's really all about just the monsters. And you're not gonna do a killing off Bryan Cranston thing, which I suppose they were criticized for, or Rebecca Hall in King of the Monsters, which was a very problematic plot line in King of the Monsters. But in that respect, it really makes the humans disposable because they are just archetypes. They are literally there to, get from place to place and to facilitate Godzilla and Kong and Mechagodzilla fighting. And the bad ones get killed off and the good ones succeed, and great. Everything's great. And so, so it at that point becomes a three-way brawl. It becomes again, just in case someone has joined, Godzilla versus Kong versus Mechagodzilla. And I suppose the big problem for that, and the thing that really lets it down, is it means that we never get a conclusive answer of who is greater. Like I said, this is a number of bouts. You end up with Godzilla beating Kong in the first fight, Kong beating Godzilla in the second fight, I think, and then Mechagodzilla showing up or something like that. And then they team up. And so for people who kind of went in for the one thing they wanted, which is a definitive who's going to win, it's not really. It reminds me a lot of the Fast and Furious spin-off Hobbs and Shaw with The Rock and Jason Statham in it, where and it was very much showing off the hubris of actors, that they were so determined to make sure that both these men come across as equally as important and strong, that neither one can be stronger than the other, neither one can get the sort of foot up on the other. And when they fight Idris Elba, it literally becomes a plot point about, oh, if you hit him, and he'll have to concentrate on that, and then I will get a hit on him, to the point where it's like, oh, are you counting blows so that both men get as equal amount of blows? And
I believe it was written into their contracts.
Yes, exactly. It was written into their contracts, and that made that ridiculous. And so similarly, it is a bit like, oh, so you didn't want to sort of definitively side one way or another, because, you know, like I said, I'm more a Godzilla person than a Kong person. But if you'd have finished with Godzilla dying and Kong, even if it was self-sacrifice and Kong being on top, okay, yeah, that's something to talk about. I mean, what you end up doing, I mean, I will grant it, the thing it does at the end, which is almost ridiculous, is so they fight and win. They kill Mechagodzilla. Great, fantastic. And then they give each other the sort of almost like blokey acknowledgement nod, where it's like, oh yes, game recognized game. And it's just like, what? Like, you've gone to great lengths to establish like the I mean, okay, admittedly Godzilla did do it in the first film with whichever actor it was, you know, Bryan Cranston's son, in that first film, but that's very silly. The idea that Kong and Godzilla sort of look at each other, kind of give each other the nod and go, yep, you're cool. It's just, yeah, it's not. And then they find a way so that Kong is taken away to go back to the Hollow Earth, and now he can be king of the Hollow Earth, and Godzilla can be king of our world. And it ends with Kong being happy, and Monarch monitoring Kong just to make sure he's all good. And of course, it's, you know, then obviously gives the option. It gives us the cake and allows us to eat it too, because it means Kong and Godzilla's settled their feud. Kong is somewhere else entirely, so if there is a future Godzilla film, it explains why he's not there. But if people want him to come back, oh, Monarch have a way to bring him back, and he can come and join the fight again. And I don't know what I expected, but it was very silly. And I think, unfortunately, that's the great fallback of kaiju films, is they do fall into the silliness of it. And it's very hard to balance the, you know, oh, this is terrifying, genuinely terrifying. This is world ending. You know, every film that we've had, with the exception of Skull Island, every film in the Godzilla trilogy we've had has genuinely been a case of, oh, this could kill. Like, we never see collateral damage completely realized. We in fact, we too tend to get that thing where it's like, oh, everyone from Hong Kong has been evacuated. It's like, oh, that's incredibly efficient. Well done. And so you never get that sense of, oh, so like hundreds of millions of people being killed. Like, this is citywide destruction. Cities are being destroyed every time monsters fight. You know, apocalyptine levels of warfare. And that would be really interesting to sort of see and discuss. But because, you know, it's a popcorn film, you can't really address that. And so it's like, oh, well, you know, we're not really going to look at it. We're going to sort of go, oh, yeah, you know, everything's fine. You know, only the bad guys get killed. And then, you know, Ken Watanabe will sacrifice himself or something. And so even he, you know. And, yeah, and so it is a bit silly. And I think it makes, like I said, Jurassic Park is the ultimate demonstration of creating a sense of what are monsters. You know, dinosaurs are literally dinosaurs, giant monsters. You knew the scale of them. You knew the unrelatability of them, that they are animals. And we don't really understand how they think, but they are primitive. They want to eat, you know, and sometimes they'll kill us because, you know, they don't really think of us, and sometimes they'll leave us alone and they'll rescue us from velociraptors. But when Jurassic Park, the original, did it, you felt like it was earned, and you felt like the sacrifices had been made, and you thought, oh my god, this has been, this has been quite the journey, and this, like I say, the scale of it and the realism of it were felt. Jurassic World, though it doesn't quite achieve what Jurassic Park did, again, you do get that sense of threat to people, and the fact that, oh my god, if these monsters escape this park or attack these people, there will be dire consequences. And I'm hoping that unfortunately, Fallen Kingdom, I think, does let that down a little bit. But I'm hoping that Colin Trevorrow's third film, Dominion, Jurassic World Dominion, will again address the fact that this is world-changing to humanity. And Godzilla vs Kong goes to great lengths to say, these monsters are the apex predators, and that's why Apex are trying to create Mechagodzilla, is because they see him, they want humans to be back on top. But we never really understand the sort of consequences of that, and it's frustrating. And as I say, you lose scale when you're constantly jumping between humans and Godzilla, kaiju. And then you have the sort of silly campiness of it, and you think, oh, I'm disassociating. I just don't. I think it's fun, but after this, I'm not really going to think about it, and I'm not going to probably watch it again. And so yeah, it's fine. It's fun. If you want something popcorn, it's the most popcorn film that I have seen this year, and it's probably going to be the only really throwaway popcorn for, the sort of thing which, summer, back in the old times, in the pre-COVID times, would have been the sort of summer blockbuster. This is that. And I think it, like I say, I worry it's going to sort of die a death on streaming, because I just don't think it quite, I don't know, maybe it has a big enough following. Again, I'm sort of doing dirty to the sort of the kaiju following and the people who have followed this, and the fact that it pays off this quadrilogy of films, and really does pay service to what's been set up. This might be the last one. That's the other thing. This might be, there's nothing about it that says this film's going to go on to anything else. It could. There's nothing to say it doesn't. But it's not like the other ones where we got a sense of, oh, maybe they're setting something up. It really does feel like, okay, we've done Godzilla, we've done King Kong, we've done them fighting each other, we've done Mothra, Rodan, Ghidorah. We've done Mechagodzilla. We've got, we've covered the gamut of classic monsters. Now they might consider doing more. I mean, again, pending the success of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is sort of the end, and that's it. And it's like, well, that is the Monsterverse done. They might not. We'll see. I don't really know, like I say, where they can go from here. But again, my knowledge of kaiju is periphery at best. So who knows? But like I say, fun throwaway. I'm glad I did the live stream for it still, because it's it is a blockbuster thing, and it is worth giving time to sort of talk about it. But it is what it is. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you again for joining the Film a Day live. Depending on how, as I've said, this is 2 live streams in a week. I don't think I'll be doing that again. Ooh, we'll see. But I'm going to try and only do live streams for films that like this, where it's something, a big release, or is worth doing it, and something that people might jump on and talk about. But other than that, standard fare, back to the traditional upload schedule. But please do have a look through my back catalogue. They're not normally as long as this. And at this point, I'm coming quite swiftly up to the 100th video. So perhaps I'll do a live stream for that. We'll see. I'm not sure. But again, it's there is a long back catalogue, and if you did like this video, please do click the like button. And if you like these sorts of videos, do subscribe and comment, and also follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm constantly tweeting new trailers. They've just released the Green Band trailer for the Suicide Squad, which I posted yesterday, sorry. And of course, I share the new videos on there as well. Thanks for joining me. Take care.